The theme of this video is God will be with you, and this theme is taken from Exodus chapters 3 and 4. So what was happening? Basically, Moses was tending to the flock of his father-in-law, and he saw a bush that was burning. It caught his attention because even though the bush was burning, it was not being consumed. So I made a few notes, so if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes for reference. So Moses led the flock to the back side of the desert, and that wasn't by chance. So whenever you're going through your day-to-day life and you feel like you're being secluded or taken away from what you're used to, then sometimes just don't sweat it, just relax and trust the process, because sometimes God has to seclude you from or draw you away from what you're used to get your full attention, right? So God will create burning bush scenarios in your life just to grab your attention, because sometimes we're so caught up in our day-to-day lives and we're busy doing this and that we don't really spend time with God. So he will create a scenario to reshift your focus, right? And sometimes you just be like, okay, I don't feel God's presence and he's not talking to me, and it's because you haven't made room for him to speak to you. You have to make time to hear from God. I was pondering on the significance of why God told Moses to take off his shoes, and it's because sometimes the shoes act as a barrier. Moses was in the presence of God, and God didn't want anything to be separating him from experiencing the fullness of God at that point in time. So in Exodus 3 verse 19, where God was just basically saying that, I'm sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not by mighty hand. So whichever path that you have for your life, whatever venture you're going out into, it's inevitable that you will face challenges, but at the end of the day, God will make a way. In Exodus 4 verse 2, where God was answering Moses after he was saying that, what if the people don't believe me, blah 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 blah, God said to him, what is it in your hand? And Moses answered and said, a rod. So sometimes you really just have to use what you have. Sometimes you don't even recognize the importance of the things that you have until someone else shows it to you. So don't wait on perfection. Don't wait until you have theoretically every single thing that you need. Just go out and just try something with what you have until you can build up and get more stuff and whatever. So just use what you have, and don't use the excuse that, oh, I need this to do that, prevent you from going out and doing what God called you to do. Just use what you have, and when you use what you have and you start, God will provide along the way. Exodus 4 verse 3, God commanded Moses to cast the rod that he had in his hand on the ground, and then it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. So Moses was scared of what he had, and as human beings, we're often scared of what we have, and this fear prevents us from trying or even starting. That's why Moses ran. So sometimes you run away from the potential of what you have, and the term running away doesn't have to be you physically running away. Sometimes you run away from what you have by not acting on it. You run away from what you have by procrastinating and say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, blah 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 blah. You can run away from what you have by not maximizing your potential, by not actually acting on what you have, by shying away from it and by procrastinating. Running away from what you have can come in the form of you having a talent and not exploring the depths of it. So you're just comfortable, just barely scratching the surface because, oh, you're good at this, so you don't try to maximize your potential. Sometimes you might not even know that you're running away from what you have, because as human beings, we tend to mask our fears by remaining in our comfort zones. So procrastination masks your fear, so you're not even cognizant that, hey, I'm actually running away from this gift, this talent that I have. So my encouragement to you is to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone and you become uncomfortable, that's you pushing your limits, and that will cause you to Exodus 4 verse 10 reads, Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." My encouragement to you is don't focus too much on what you lack, because here it is that Moses got an order from God to, deliver his people from Egypt, and then Moses was saying, "Oh, I'm not eloquent, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that," and he was focusing too much on what he lacked and not on what God called him to do. Because if God calls you to do something, then he will equip you to carry out that task. So I'm just going to read a scripture from 1 Corinthians verse 27 and 30. "But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him." Based on this scripture, you might think that it would be the wise choice to choose a man that is muscular and, a born leader and, probably aggressive to go out and deliver the Israelites that were enslaved. But here it is that God chose Moses, a man that was not eloquent and slow of speech and everything. And it's because, as it says here in the scripture, God chooses the weak things to shame the strong. So it's not what the world thinks is acceptable or the better choice. It's what God says goes. Sometimes it's not what the world thinks is the better choice, but what God ordains and says, "I choose you." As it says here in the scripture, God will choose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. So at the end of the day, everything is just for the glory of God. Focusing on verse 28, where it says, "God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are." So Moses was not eloquent. Moses was slow of speech. And that same man that was not eloquent and was slow of speech nullified the persons that were eloquent and not slow of speech, right? Because it was this man that people probably look on and say, who are you to want to deliver enslaved people, because of just probably how we looked, right? But God doesn't look at that. When God calls you to do something, he will equip you. So the things that you think you lack are the things that God will use, right? Because as I said, at the end of the day, God must get the glory, and it's in our weakness that God gets to show his strength. Whatever situation you find yourself in, whether it's that you are thinking about starting a business, you're thinking about doing some investments, you're thinking about applying for a particular job, starting a YouTube channel, you're thinking about pretty much anything. Whatever it is that you're thinking about doing and you just find yourself in a state of procrastination, remember that procrastination tends to mask fear. So just be bold, confront it, pray about it. Once God is on your side, he will equip you. Don't focus too much on what you lack or what you're not good at. You don't feel you're qualified, you don't feel that you're ready enough to do this, or you're just trying to put it out because you're finding lesser things that are not aligned. Just use what you have. Stop procrastinating. Just go out and do it. Just start, and God will be with you. So yeah.